And the eyes have it. The eyes always have it. So much so that when I'm cataloging it, when you ever hear me use the phrase splendid eyes, look at those eyes. They are knockouts. But I wanted to show you another reason why looking at eyes in the French poupées is important, because it can help you isolate to a small period of time the time your doll may have been made. I want to tell you that when I was preparing for this, I went down a rabbit hole about eyes. And I now know the whole history of glass eyes, dating back to the 12th century. And it's really actually quite intriguing, because I have been trying to find out, and I've always been fascinated. If you look at every doll I'm showing you here today in the French poupées, you're not seeing brown eyes. Not a single one. And I honestly would have to go back through our search engine and look and see how many brown-eyed poupées we have ever had. I'm going to suspect it's going to be a minute number. I don't know why. I don't understand what the reason is. Blue was the color. I looked up, Empress Eugenie had blue eyes, so that could have been a reason that during this short period of time when she was the beloved leader of France and was very involved in the whole fashion scene, that the dolls were emulating the color of her eyes, which were very famous. And that's a possibility, but I don't know. If someone has ideas, I'd love to hear them. I looked up the kind of materials that they were made from, and that gave me no clues either. But here is what I will tell you. In the earlier period, late 1850s, early 1860s, and leading into mid 1860s, we are going to have the eyes that are shown on this doll, which are known as the cobalt blue eyes. They're very, very brilliant, bright blue eyes. They don't have a lot of nuance of shading at all, but they are just notable for their extraordinary color and their brilliant, brilliant blueness, especially because this is also the period where the complexions are still almost without blushing. They're very, very white, and just the dramatic contrast of the pale complexion and the blue eyes is really quite notable. Very lovely doll. Again, I'm just showing you the doll as well because I know you're all peeking at the whole thing. We come down to just a little bit later, maybe a couple years later, but a little bit different, a variation in the eyes, not as intense in the color, and they start to be enhanced by having this very thick, dark eyeliner around the eyes, which helps to pop them out. And these eyes, to me, are more like, the whole presentation is more lifelike, whereas this one is, the eyes are so prominent that it's almost like a doll, whereas this really looks like a person. But again, that's a different variation than you're seeing. We move along a little bit later, and when the camera comes in tight on these eyes, I want you to start to see something. What is happening is the use of glass eyes with an overlay, which we've come to call paperweight eyes, is starting to be made. And there's an overlay on top of the iris. And what is happening is you've got this beautiful spiral threading that's happening in the eyes. And then the iris is not just one single color, but there's like a darker rim around the iris, forming very, very beautiful eyes once again. And these are all blue-eyed. And then the final one that I'm showing you, where you have a very, very pale blue color, you have light spiral threading and a very pronounced iris rim on them. And again, look at all of them. I've had the great opportunity. I wish every one of you could have been here and could have seen the dolls lined up in different formations and comparing one to the other. One of the things that I've noticed is that some of the dolls, and I'll show you one later, that has very, very strong dark eyeliner right around the eye rim. I mean, it really pops the dolls out and makes them very special. Now, did this take the expert artist in the factory painting to do it so that only the best people could? Was it an extra layer of paint that had to be put on? All of these things might have gone into what would have made that doll the product that they wanted to present, and the price that they could present it for, and the luxury store that would be handling it. But again, color of eyes that changed from like the 1860 period up until the 1875 period, going from one end to the other. So while I've been showing you poupées with their fashion bodies designed to be wearing fashion clothes, also important to remember that at the same time as the porcelain makers were making heads, these heads were also being used for various other purposes. For example, Jules Steiner, who did not make poupées per se, did use the poupée heads for a series of mechanical dolls that he had, including this wonderful lady who, when she is wound, will glide around the room and lift the baby up and down in her arms as though she is rocking him. And again, using the beautiful poupée head. And then down in the bottom, I told you that Gaultier had opened his porcelain factory in 1867 and made dolls under commission for myriads of other doll makers, but also made dolls that carried his own initials and a very distinctive facial model. And the auction has 4 examples of these dolls, the 2 on the outer edge wearing costumes, original costumes. I'll turn it around so you can see the back side as well. Very beautifully done costume of red wool and velvet. And you can see the face. It's a very distinctive, recognizable face. A very lovely lady in her white gown, which I love these sleeves, these capelet sleeves that rest over the long sleeves of her gown. Very lovely. This one is absolutely wonderful. She is the Normandy governess. Her very distinctive Normandy coif in lace, which is quite remarkable. And the wonderful fabric of her cape, which matches her apron, and then the underdress and holding the little baby, and even the pocket on the cape with a matching blue silk ribbon. Very fine. And then on the other side, again, like a store original, beautiful fashion lady. And if you look at their eyes, they're all basically the same eyes, because at this point, the eyes have been perfected, and Gaultier is undoubtedly getting them from a single source for his making of his eyes. Jean-Marie Gupré was a maker of glass eyes in France at the time and other glass type of objects, and eventually tied in with Émile Gimeau, and then eventually had an actual working studio in the Gimeau factory once Gimeau built his entire factory out, and all of the Gimeau eyes were made by Jean-Marie Gupré, which was very, very distinctive, until there was a lawsuit because one of the people who left Gimeau hired him to come make eyes for him. That was another French lawsuit, which is always intriguing to those of us who like history of dolls. Now, coming back to this table, okay, it's what you've all been waiting for. I know you're saying, I don't care what you say, Florence, about the body, about the eyes, about anything. To me, it's all about the face. So I have put up here 5 of what I consider absolutely beautiful facial models from the Poupée collection that we will be offering. And you can judge if you like them, whether you like them, which one you like the best. I'd be interested in knowing. This is one I talked to you a little while ago about the dark eye lining around the eye, and this one had that very, very notable dark eye lining, which really popped her eyes out. But look at her complexion now. It's not the white complexion anymore. There is just a very subtle tint of coloring in it. And then we come down to the blush cheeks that, again, it's subtle. It's not just a blob of blush in the cheeks, but a very, very subtly done, beautifully painted features, an absolutely stunning doll, and a stunning original costume, I might say. So I'm going to let you see the back of it as well. You can tell I really think this is a beauty. Now this girl, she's different. Wow, what a different face on this doll. I don't know, I haven't seen many of the models like, I can't think of any offhand I've seen like this. I don't know if it was a special commission. I don't want to go so far as to say that, but I will tell you a very, very different and very unusual face, and really just quite lovely and very, very regal. And again, the brilliant blue eyes help you pinpoint that she is an earlier model. That would be from the mid-1860s. Very beautiful model. Next to her, we have another lovely companion, also has the beautiful cobalt blue eyes and the pale complexion, so again, would also be an earlier model. And again, a very distinctive, to me, a very distinctive expression, which is much to be desired. We follow along with a girl that is a classic Jumeau poupée that would have been made in the 1870, 72 period. And there's something about that face. It's always so gentle and so, I don't know, serene looking. And in this particular case, accentuated with this magnificent provincial costume that she's wearing that just really brings out her beauty. But again, the faces, just all, do not think poupées are all alike. There's so many variations in faces. And then the final one, the very famous, the Smiling Brew Poupée, and I'm going to show you something in a book about this that will make you understand why I say it's important you need to have the books in your hand and not just think you can always rely on, I can find it on the internet, because you're not going to find everything. And it's so precious to preserve written books. And I want to show you some of those books now, if you don't mind. We have to thank, with more than you can imagine, the work of Francois and Danielle Timer in France, who have produced some research that is incomparable. It really has. I know of all of the years of going to France and working with them, how Danielle would take off and go down. I mean, this was before internet, and you go down into the archives and you would have your note paper and you would have to make notes, and it was laborious and tedious. And this was year after year that they did this. And then they put this all together, and a couple of their wonderful books. This is the panorama of the Parisian dolls, which are the poupées. And it has so many patent drawings in here and so much history of Paris at the time. It's just an absolutely extraordinary book. And then he sidled out his favorite, the Hooray dolls, and did an entire book only on the Hooray doll, and tells the whole background of the family and just the wonderful examples they did and the patent she did and everything. It was just, it's a wonderful book. If you don't have those two, you need to. And then I will point out the books that I worked on with them that I think everybody needs to have. And this book, listen, if you just want bedtime reading, this is a 2-volume set, the Encyclopedia of the French Dolls. And for example, you're going to find in here the whole legal study of Romer versus Hooray, the whole thing that the judge said at the end about why he was finding in favor of Adelaide Hooray. And if you like to follow legal cases, like, if you're a Law and Order fan like I am, you love reading these kind of things, and it was really interesting, and I just take issue with a lot of the things he said. So this is a 2-volume set, and if you don't have that, you need to have it, because there's research here you are never going to find anywhere else. And then finally we did the Brew book, and I did the Brew book and the Jumeau book with them, the English editions, and this of course covers the whole years of the Jumeau factory and firm, but all of the information on the early years with the early poupées is in this book, and the same thing is true on the Brew book, the early. And I want to tell you a great story about this one, just to end it. Let me find the page in here. So we were working on this book, and we'd been working on it for months and months and months, and we were ready to go to press, and Francois called. He said, wait, stop the presses. He said, we've just been back to the archives, and we found something. And this is what they found. And they had a picture of it. The actual head of the Smiling Brew, this girl right here, was deposed in the French archives, and they had a picture of it that they brought out. We were able to get it into the book. Until this happened, there was only supposition that this was a brew based on having been found on bodies that were believed to be brew, and so many the same, but there was no definitive proof. And they did it, they found it. And here's the box, here's the actual head model, and there is the model of the head that was deposed in the French archives by Leon Casimir Brew. Wonderful piece of research, and so important. I say you need to buy the books even if you think you can find it on the internet. You got to support the research that people like the Timers are doing. It's so important to do that. It really is. And then I always want to, well, you should own the Blondinette book also. of a collection that we sold years ago. But this is one of my books that I'm the proudest of. It's A Fully Perfected Grace, because that was a phrase that Leon Casimir Brew used to describe his wooden body brew years ago, his brew fashion. He said it had a fully perfected grace. And in this, I have done a lot of research on names of all of the shops in Paris at the time, all of the patents that were done, the numbers of the patents, so you can find them, and then just, some wonderful color photography, as always, as we have. So this is a good book to have as well. And I urge you to do that. And now I've finished on that little legend. I'm going to show you, as an added treat to the poupées, we're going to move in. I'm going to show you one little thing in the bébés. We have 5 golden age brew bébés in this auction, and I'm going to show them to you. So hold on.